escaped that. But correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that the young armourer has received a prison sentence for her involvement, and therefore it was deemed expedient to recast it. And actually, essentially, I think Aaron Eckhart was a much better choice for the role. He's he's bucking to be chief of station in the piece, and therefore it was perhaps more accurate to have a slightly younger actor play the part. And I was very interested to meet with Aaron Eckhart and work with him, because I've seen him in a great many films and always been impressed by what he delivers, with those extraordinary, fine, aquiline looks. And I well remember our first scene together when I just sort of meet him in a corridor as deputy director of the CIA. And we completed the scene, and I didn't see him for the rest of the day, but I had another couple of things to do, I think, with him. But the director said to me afterwards, he said, Aaron, he said, he didn't know what to make of you. He said, what is it with these British actors? My God, they just get in your face. What the hell is it with these British actors? So I think he was, I'm not going to use the word impressed, but let's just say that I didn't let the side down. Let's put it like that. And there was a possibility of me doing a picture with him last year as well. So obviously he was not going to dismiss the idea of having me on board again. Actually, a terrific role for me. But unfortunately, the picture didn't go. There was a great deal of uncertainty last year with anything going into production, because following the director strike, the DGA strike, and Hollywood knew that would be followed by the WGA strike, the Writers Guild of America strike, and knew that the Screen Actors Guild of America, SAG, would follow. And indeed we did, and we were on strike for 118 days before resolution, I think the end of the first week in November last year. So, that made life very difficult, not just for all the actors, but for anybody else associated with a film. As you know, we have very large crews and a great deal of support, and very, very difficult for those people who own transport companies, for instance. In their transport, they're paying for space for 6 months and it's not going to work. Maybe they're doing a couple of days a month servicing an advertisement or something. But, last year was a bad year for the industry. And it's only just now picking up pace again, because a lot of actors, had started a film, the film then got stopped, and they're completing production in the first 3-4 months of this year, and that's pushed other work back down the line and made it difficult for the studios to accommodate everybody. That didn't apply when we were in Budapest. It's always a pleasure shooting in Budapest. I've shot a great many films there. I think one film that your listeners might have seen is called Atomic Blonde, with Charlize Theron, and that was shot in Budapest. Although the film is based on a graphic novel called The Coldest City, and is set in Berlin, but we shot it in Budapest. It can double rather well, and it's not as expensive to shoot in Budapest as it is in Berlin. And so I've been there many times to Budapest. The first time I went to Budapest, which is actually more interesting, perhaps, for your listeners, was in 1972, when Budapest was still very much behind the Iron Curtain.
And was it for leisure, or was it for work purposes?
It was for leisure. I was actually shooting my very first film in 1972, which was an MGM musical called The Great Waltz, which was about the Strauss family. And I played Joseph Strauss and had to play the Pizzicata polka on camera. And indeed, I think sing a bit and do a lot of dancing, largely on boats and marble ballrooms. And I had a day off, and I thought, well, I've never been to Hungary. It would be wonderful to go and see Budapest, which has always held a degree of mystery for me. And it has some fantastic architecture, quite a lot of French architecture. Monsieur Eiffel built the Gare S, the East Station, I think, rather wonderful construction. And as you know, it's on the banks of that great river. And so I drove myself and my then girlfriend into Hungary. And then I remember going out to dinner in the only decent restaurant then in Budapest, which was in the walls of the castle. And the dinner guests, there were, I think, 9 of us for dinner. There was myself, my girlfriend, and 7 Russian generals. The only people who could afford to eat there.
James,
and then I tried to get out of Hungary again on a 24-hour pass. If it wasn't only a 12-hour pass, I mean, it was very, very limited. I know, the film company swung it for me because it was an MGM show, and I picked up some young guy, gave him a lift to about 5 kilometers short of the border. Well, obviously somebody had seen him get into my car. So when we got to the border, they took the car apart, mirrors underneath, the upholstery out, the whole business, walked off with our passports for half an hour, somewhat alarming because they would assume perhaps that I was trying to smuggle a Hungarian national out of the country. I was not.
Okay, very much so. We talk about espionage, and that's definitely a bit of espionage. And this movie is based on the whole concept of espionage. It's like an espionage action sort of a thriller. There's a bit of suspense, intrigue in terms of the storyline.
I do a lot of spy movies, Jim. I've played a lot of spies. I've played the head of MI5, the head of MI6. I've played field officers. I'm very briefly. Yeah, no, it's always interesting to me. Then they're interesting people. I once played. I mean, I've played double agent certainly, but I once played a quadruple agent, based on Herr Wolf of the Stasi. But on air at the moment is a series called The Slow Horses with Gary Oldman, and I'm very briefly in it. I'm effectively the ghost of MI5 past, Charles Faulkner. A great series of novels. And in fact, I've just read a John le Carre, A Like-Minded Spy, I think it's called, which was fun to do. I spent all last week doing that, and you get to play all the characters. You do your own casting. You do all your own voices. That's about money laundering, Russian money laundering in particular, with Dima, member of Vori. And John le Carre, as you know, David Cornwell, knew what he was talking about because he had been a serving officer in MI6 for 20-odd years and always knew what he was writing about. And there is a suggestion in the novel that the British establishment did not mind where the money was coming from because the book was written in 2009, just after the financial crash. They didn't mind where the money was coming from as long as there was a lot of it, billions and billions and billions of black Russian money. That's what the book is about.
And James, in terms of the inspiration, in terms of playing these sort of CIA roles, would you go back to the early James Bond films with Sean Connery in terms of writing that, in terms of looking at maybe some of the CIA, the whole sort of the old
that world does fascinate me. That's certainly true. It's interesting playing a double agent because double agents, are always aware when there's a change in circumstances. They can detect the slightest movement of air in a room that somebody's there perhaps that shouldn't be there. I enjoy the fact that you're playing people who are continually on the edge of discovery.
And this movie, James, it's got an awful lot of, once it picks up, the pace picks up fairly rapidly.
There's a lot of really good action in the picture, and Aaron Eckhart is really good at this sort of stuff. And it was also a pleasure to meet up with Olga Kurylenko, because I think her first film was Hitman, and I play the Hitman's CIA handler in that. And we shot that in Sofia, in Bulgaria. And that was the first time I met Olga, and she was across the table from me at 4 a.m, trying to keep awake while we did a scene in the back streets of Sofia. And then I'd worked with her in 2022. She plays in a British movie about Queen Boudica, and I'm briefly in that. I anoint her as Queen Boudica. I play an elderly druid with a lot of mud on my face.
James, in this movie as well, one of my all-time favorite stunt actors, and in terms of fight actors, is in this movie as well. You might remember him from his time in Bloodsport. He was also in the Mortal Kombat Conquest series. Daniel Bernhardt, a terrific sort of stunt action sort of actor as well. And
I don't know Daniel, but Nick Moran is in the picture as well,
yeah.
who I've worked with many times. In fact, we refer to each other as Gilbert and Sullivan. We've become a double act in a lot of films.
And in terms of this sort of, the opportunity comes about for you to get involved with Chief of Station. Was the normal talent audition sort of process when someone reached out for you in terms of your talent agent, said we have this role that might be so suited for you? Would you be interested?
I think it was a direct request from the director.
Okay. Okay, fantastic altogether. So you were sought after. You didn't really have to even send in the old demo tape.
That would be correct, Jim.
Yeah. Those roles are always lovely, aren't they? When you know you're particularly wanted for a role, and
it makes a difference to how you approach the production. It really does. I don't enjoy the auditioning process, and I really don't enjoy doing self-taping. If pushed, I will do it, but largely, certainly my American manager refuses on my behalf, and I'm very grateful for it. You know, it's an offer or nothing. You know, get on with it. Do you want to use him or not?
And James, in terms of,
I mean, the thing I've just finished yesterday, I got back yesterday from Italy, from Sperlonga, where I've been shooting episode 1 of a new series, which is Lux Vide Fremantle for Amazon, called Regina del Sol, Queen of the South, it's going to be called, I think, in English. And that's half in Italian, half in English. And I play another American in that. A very difficult businessman, a very senior businessman, who arrives at the hotel with his 4th wife, who is 26 years old. Very good for my image, Jim.
Very good, very good. And tell me, James, in terms of 2024, you mentioned that movie there that you're just after wrapping up filming. Is there anything else in the pipeline for James Faulkner? Is it a busy year for you? And are we going to see your on our TV screens and movie screens?
There are a couple of offers on the table, and I'll be doing something certainly in late August, probably down here in Provence, but I may go to the States beforehand. But let's just say this year is proving to be a lot more interesting than 2023. Okay. I already did a picture in Prague at the top of the year, a Czech film, in fact, very, very young auteur, director, and the writer, and the film. He owns the film company, David Balder, and I give my Archbishop of Prague. Oh yes.
Okay. And before we came on air, James, you mentioned you were only in Belfast only recently. So, well, not recently, maybe in the last
not
few
that
years,
recently, no. But I did go over to Belfast. Yes, Jim, you're absolutely right. I did go over to Belfast a few times on a little show called Game of Thrones.
Just a small show. Just a small show. That one.
You know, just a few actors getting together. In Game of Thrones, I play a character called Randall Tarley. I'm the father of Samwell, that chubby boy who I descend to the wall and toughen him up. Because I am, you know, I played a very hard-nosed character in Randall Tarley, you know, a martinet, a difficult man to be in the room with, and who is immolated by dragon in season 7, I think.
Okay. And James Faulkner, now for the final 30 seconds, I'm going to turn it over to you. Why should people go out to their cinema screens at the moment, get the Fanta, the popcorn, the Maltesers, roll up to the cinema, whatever mode of transport, plane, train, automobile, tractor, get into the cinema screens, get onto that recliner, stretch out that feet, pop the 1 or 2 Maltesers back in the mouth, watch Chief of Station and James Faulkner. What's in store for them when they do?
Well, you know, you can't beat the big screen. It's much more involving. I mean, a lot of people these days have very large screens in their own homes and pretty decent sound systems to go along with them. But, you know, the massive screen with full Dolby sound it's an event, and you know, it's an event that you share with other members of the audience, and it's still the most attractive way of being entertained. And live theatre is also, any of these events are terrific, and actually, I think, rather more deserving of your money than going to a football match.
Okay, very much true. On that note, James Faulkner, a pleasure talking to you today on the airways to talk all about Chief of Station, your role as Deputy Director Austin Williams, alongside Aaron Eckhart, Olga Kurilenko, Alex Pettyfair, Nina Bergman, and Nick Moran. A pleasure, James, and hopefully, please God, we'll speak to you sometime again in the near future.
See it and be entertained, and hopefully you come back to me for something more, Jim. A pleasure.
Take care, James.